morning sun barely broke through the thick canopy of the Peruvian rainforest as Dr. Maya Santiago wiped sweat from her forehead. 6 days into the expedition, and the humidity still felt like walking through soup. Her small team of 4 researchers and 2 local guides had been tracking unusual settlement patterns of ancient tribes. When they veered off their planned route to investigate, something their satellite images couldn't explain. "We should reach the clearing in about half an hour," called out Luis, their lead guide, machete in hand as he cleared another tangle of vines from their path. Maya nodded, taking a swig from her water bottle. At 42, she'd spent nearly 2 decades exploring remote regions. But something about this expedition felt different. The local villages had shared stories about a ghost in the trees that had appeared after the Great Floods 15 years ago. Most researchers dismissed these as typical folklore, but Maya had learned that local legends often contained kernels of truth. "Dr. Santiago, you need to see this," called Raj, the team's botanist who had wandered slightly ahead. His voice carried an unusual edge. The team converged at a small rise in the terrain. Through a rare break in the jungle canopy, sunlight illuminated something impossible. A massive white structure rising above the trees about a quarter-mile ahead. "What on earth?" Maya whispered, grabbing her binoculars. What came into focus made her heart skip. The unmistakable bow of a cruise ship, not some small riverboat but a massive ocean liner, jutted from the jungle like a skyscraper. Its white hull, now weather-stained and partially covered in climbing vines, rose improbably among the trees. "That can't be real," said Hiro, their photographer, already changing lenses on his camera. "We're at least 80 miles from the coast." Maya checked their GPS coordinates again, confirming they were deep in the rainforest, nowhere near any river large enough for even a small boat, let alone an ocean liner. "Luis, Pedro, have you heard anything about this?" Maya asked the guides, who were staring open-mouthed at the vessel. Luis crossed himself quickly. "This is the ghost the elders speak of. It appeared after the great waters came. Many believe it is cursed." Pedro nodded vigorously. "No one from my village will come to this place." The team pushed forward with renewed energy, hacking through increasingly dense vegetation. As they got closer, the sheer scale of the ship became apparent. It had to be at least 12 decks high, its hull partially buried in earth and jungle growth. "I recognize the design," said Danielle, the team's historian who had worked briefly in maritime research. "This looks like the Aurora Star. It disappeared about 15 years ago during its maiden voyage. Over 1,000 people were on board." Maya remembered the news stories now, one of those maritime mysteries that captivated the world briefly before fading from headlines. The working theory had been that the ship sank in a storm, though no wreckage was ever found. "That's impossible," Maya said, though the evidence towered before them. How could a cruise ship end up this far inland? They reached a clearing that offered the best view yet. The Aurora Star sat in what appeared to be a massive dried-up basin. The surrounding terrain showed signs of what might have been catastrophic flooding years earlier. "The tsunami of 2010, Danielle whispered. "It hit this coastline hard. There were reports of water reaching miles inland. But this far?" Maya questioned. "And with enough force to carry a cruise ship?" Hiro was already documenting everything, his camera clicking rapidly. "The topography here forms a natural channel. If a powerful enough wave came through and the ship was caught in it." Maya studied the surrounding landscape with new eyes. The geology told a story. A massive wall of water funneling through a narrow valley, carrying the massive vessel inland before receding and leaving it stranded as the waters found their natural path back to the ocean. "We need to get closer," Maya decided. As they approached, the eerie majesty of the ship became overwhelming. Nature had begun reclaiming it. Vines climbed its sides, birds nested in open balconies, and small trees had taken root in soil collected on its outer decks. Yet it remained recognizable as the luxury liner it once was, its name still visible through the grime, Aurora Star. The gangway had long since collapsed, but a section of the hull had buckled near the ground, creating what looked like a possible entrance. Maya approached it cautiously, flashlight in hand. "This isn't safe," warned Pedro, refusing to come closer. "The spirits of the lost may still be trapped inside." Luis nodded in agreement. "We will wait here. Please don't disturb anything you find." The 4 researchers exchanged glances, silently acknowledging the risk but too driven by curiosity to turn back now. We'll just take a quick look inside, Maya assured them. And be extra careful. The opening in the hull led to what must have been a lower storage area. Sunlight filtered through cracks above, illuminating dust particles dancing in the air. The smell of mold and rust hung heavy, but underneath was something else. A lingering scent of humanity, like an abandoned home. Watch your step, Maya cautioned as they navigated through the tilted room. Broken crates and waterlogged furniture created an obstacle course. They found a service stairwell still intact and carefully climbed to the deck above. What they found stopped them in their tracks. A grand corridor stretched before them, lined with doors to what were once luxury cabins. Unlike the chaos they expected from a disaster, everything seemed strangely organized. Suitcases were stacked neatly against one wall. A cleaning cart sat parked mid-hallway as if its operator had just stepped away for a moment. It doesn't look like everyone rushed to evacuate, Danielle observed, her voice hushed in the stillness. They continued down the corridor, each room telling a similar story. Personal belongings arranged carefully, beds made. Nothing like the panic scene you'd expect. They didn't think they were in danger, Hero suggested. Maybe they didn't know what was happening until it was too late. The ship groaned suddenly, metal shifting somewhere deep in its structure. Everyone froze. Maybe we shouldn't stay long, Raj suggested nervously. They found their way to a grand staircase that led to the main deck. Emerging into what must have been the ship's atrium, sunlight streamed through broken skylights above, illuminating a once luxurious space now transformed by time and elements. Plants had taken root in the plush carpeting. A piano sat silently in the corner, its lid open as if waiting for a performer who would never return. But what caught Maya's eye was the reception desk. Behind it, protected somewhat from the elements, was a logbook, and next to it, something that sent a chill down her spine. A handwritten journal with an entry dated 2 weeks after the ship had supposedly disappeared. "Guys," she called to the others, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't think everyone died in the initial disaster." She carefully opened the journal, revealing page after page of neat handwriting. "There were survivors," she said, looking up at her stunned colleagues. "They lived here for quite some time, it seems." Hero pointed to something on the wall behind the desk, a hand-drawn calendar system with marks extending for months, then years. "What happened to them?" Raj asked, looking around as if expecting to find the answer written on the walls. Maya carefully tucked the journal into her waterproof bag. "That's what we need to find out." A loud crack from somewhere above sent dust raining down on them. But not today, Maya decided. We need proper equipment and support before we explore further. As they carefully made their way back outside, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that they'd just stumbled onto a story far more complex than a lost ship. The Aurora Star hadn't simply vanished in the ocean depths. It had become something else entirely. A time capsule, a shelter, perhaps even a home. And whatever happened inside its walls after it was swallowed by the jungle was waiting to be discovered. 3 days after discovering the Aurora Star, Maya stood at the edge of a hastily built camp, watching as helicopters delivered equipment and additional team members. News of their find had spread like wildfire, and what began as a small archaeological expedition had transformed into an international sensation. "The government finally cleared us for a full investigation," said Raj, joining her with a clipboard full of inventory lists. "But they're giving us just 2 weeks before they take over." Maya nodded, eyes fixed on the massive white hull rising above the trees. In the morning light, with mist curling around its frame, the ship looked almost ethereal, a ghost from another world. 2 weeks should be enough to gather initial evidence," she replied. "I'm more concerned about the ship's stability. The structural engineers arrived this afternoon, right?" "Along with the maritime investigation team and the documentary crew," Raj confirmed. "The university is thrilled, by the way. They've already secured 3 major research grants based on this find alone." Maya barely heard him. She was thinking about the journal they'd found, which she'd spent the past nights reading by flashlight. Its author, a passenger named Thomas Chen, had documented the early days after what he called the impossible journey. His detailed accounts painted a picture of confusion, fear, and eventually remarkable resilience. "Did you see this morning's headlines?" Danielle approached, holding up her satellite phone. "Ghost ship of the Amazon is trending worldwide. There are already conspiracy theories about aliens and time warps," Maya smiled slightly. Let them speculate. We'll follow the evidence. By midday, their expedition had tripled in size. The camp bustled with activity as specialized teams prepared for what everyone was calling the approach, the first official entry and documentation of the ship. Dr. Akira Tanaka, a naval disaster specialist who'd flown in from Tokyo, joined Maya as they reviewed satellite and drone images of the ship and surrounding terrain. The tsunami theory makes the most sense, he said, tracing a path on the topographic map. This valley creates a natural funnel. A powerful enough wave could have carried the ship inland before receding. But that far? Maya questioned. We're over 80 miles from the coast, Akira nodded. There are historical precedents. The 1771 Yayama tsunami in Japan carried multi-ton stones almost 2.5 kilometers inland. Scale that up with the right conditions. He shrugged. Nature is capable of extraordinary things. By late afternoon, the structural engineers had completed their initial assessment using scanning equipment and drones. The good news is that the main structure is surprisingly sound, reported Valeria, the lead engineer. The ship is partially buried in sediment, which has actually stabilized it. The bad news is that there are weak points, particularly in the lower decks where water damage was most severe. Maya studied the 3D model they'd created. Can we safely enter? Yes, but carefully. We've identified the safest access points and routes through the interior. Some areas are completely off limits. Valeria highlighted several red zones on the model, and no one goes alone under any circumstances. That evening, the team gathered around the campfire to finalize their plan for the next day. The mood was a mix of excitement and unease. Local workers refused to approach the ship, instead helping with the camp and supplies. Their whispered stories about the cursed vessel had spread, creating an atmosphere of superstition that even the scientists found hard to ignore. According to maritime records, Danielle explained to the group, the Aurora Star disappeared on April 12, 2010. During its maiden voyage from Miami to Rio de Janeiro, there were 273 people on board, 927 passengers and 346 crew members. The last communication was a routine check-in. No distress signal was ever received. And the same day, a major tsunami hit this coastline, added Akira. Though no one connected the events at the time, Maya passed around copies of pages from Thomas Chen's journal. What we know from this is that at least some people survived the initial event. Chen describes a massive wave that lifted the ship like a toy and carried it inland. He writes about people gathering in the main hall, the captain trying to maintain order. Hiro, who had spent the day photographing the exterior of the ship, spoke up. The strangest thing is how organized everything looks from the outside. No signs of panic. It's like the ship was carefully parked here. That's consistent with what we saw inside, Maya agreed. Whatever happened, it wasn't a chaotic evacuation. Dawn broke with a light rain that made the jungle steam. Teams gathered at the designated entry point, a service door on the port side that the engineers had deemed most stable. Everyone wore protective gear, helmets with lights, gloves, masks for potential mold, and communication devices. Remember the buddy system, Maya reminded them as they prepared to enter. And stick to the marked safe routes. Our priority today is documentation, photos, video, samples. Look, but don't disturb anything more than necessary. The first step inside felt like crossing a threshold in time. The air was stale but not as bad as expected, suggesting some ventilation existed. Sunlight filtered through cracks and broken windows, creating eerie light patterns on walls and floors. The slight tilt of the ship made walking disorienting, like being on a funhouse floor. They moved carefully through service corridors and into the main areas of the ship. Every room told stories that deepened the mystery. The kitchen contained organized storage areas with long-expired food supplies. The main dining room had tables with place settings, as if prepared for a meal that never happened. It's like they were expecting to use the ship for a long time, observed Akira, examining a makeshift calendar scratched into a wall. It showed dates extending nearly 5 years beyond the ship's disappearance. In the ship's hospital bay, they found medical records meticulously maintained for years, documenting illnesses, births, and deaths. The ship's pharmacy had been carefully rationed with handwritten labels tracking inventory. They organized themselves, Maya said, flipping through a logbook. Created systems, assigned jobs. They survived here. The most surprising discovery came on the pool deck, which had been transformed into an elaborate garden. The pools themselves had been converted to collect rainwater with ingenious filtration systems. Planters made from repurposed furniture and fixtures filled the space, though the plants that once grew there had long since withered. They grew their own food, Raj marveled, taking soil samples. And look at these water collection systems. Whoever designed these knew what they were doing. By midday, they reached the bridge where the true scope of what happened began to emerge. Maps covered the walls, marking paths through the jungle. Logs detailed expeditions, contacts with local indigenous groups, and plans for long-term survival. The captain's quarters revealed the most valuable find yet, a comprehensive account of the community that had formed aboard the Aurora Star after disaster struck. Captain Samuel Reynolds had maintained detailed records of their extraordinary circumstance, as he called it. "Listen to this," Maya said, carefully turning pages of the captain's log. Day 457. Our community now functions with remarkable efficiency. What began as a disaster has become perhaps the most unique societal experiment in modern history. We are no longer passengers and crew, but citizens of Aurora. As they continued exploring, they found evidence of how spaces had been repurposed. The casino transformed into a schoolroom, the theater into a community gathering space, luxury suites combined into family quarters. They didn't just survive here, Danielle said, her voice filled with wonder. They created a whole society. In a storage room near the engine room, they discovered technical drawings and journals from the ship's engineers. They had managed to restore partial power using salvaged parts and improvised solar collectors. As the day's exploration came to an end, and teams began to exit with their findings, Maya lingered in the captain's quarters, reading his final entries by flashlight. "We face our greatest challenge yet," she read aloud to Akiro, who waited by the door. "The ship that saved us may soon become our greatest danger." She looked up, meeting Akiro's eyes. Something forced them to leave. But what? The ship groaned around them as if holding secrets it wasn't ready to reveal. Tomorrow they would need to venture deeper, to the lower decks where the mysteries of the Aurora Star and the fate of those who had called it home awaited discovery. Morning broke over the research camp with a heavy mist that clung to the jungle and shrouded the Aurora Star in an otherworldly haze. Maya sipped her coffee, reviewing yesterday's findings with Akiro and Valeria. The ship's mystery had only deepened with each discovery. "The captain's final entries are concerning," Maya said, flipping through her notes. "He mentioned structural problems in the lower decks, something about water seepage and soil instability." Valeria nodded grimly. "That matches our scans. The weight of the ship has created a slow sinking effect. If they stayed much longer, parts of the lower decks would have become completely submerged in mud and groundwater. But that doesn't explain why they left so suddenly," Akiro pointed out. "The logs show regular maintenance. They could have continued adapting." Maya's attention drifted to the buzz of activity around them. The documentary crew was setting up for interviews. Researchers cataloged samples, and a team of digital mappers prepared equipment for creating a 3D model of the ship's interior. Everyone moved with purpose, drawn by the magnetic pull of the Aurora's secrets. "Today we focus on the passenger quarters and the lower decks," she announced, as the full team gathered for the morning briefing. "Based on the ship's blueprints, there should be a main cargo hold that we haven't accessed yet. Whatever forced these people to abandon their home might be found there." The jungle heat was already oppressive as they made their way back to the ship. Inside, the contrast of cool, stale air was almost refreshing. Teams split into assigned groups, each with specific areas to document. Maya led her team toward the passenger quarters on decks 6 through 9. Unlike the public spaces they'd explored yesterday, these areas told more personal stories. Family photos still hung on walls. Children's drawings decorated some cabins. Handmade toys sat abandoned on beds. In one suite, they found a detailed diary belonging to a woman named Lucia, a high school teacher from Brazil who had been on vacation when disaster struck. Her entries spanned 3 years and painted a vivid picture of daily life aboard the stranded vessel. "Listen to this," Maya said, carefully turning pages. "Month 14. We've established a proper school schedule for the children. It's remarkable how quickly they've adapted to our new reality. They play hide-and-seek in the empty pools and have treasure hunts through the maintenance corridors. Sometimes I forget they're living through a trauma. Children are so resilient." Danielle, who had joined Maya's team today, examined what appeared to be class rosters and lesson plans. She was teaching 37 children of various ages. Look at the curriculum. Not just basic subjects, but survival skills, local plant identification, water purification techniques. They were preparing them for a life beyond the ship, Maya realized. Another cabin revealed a workshop where someone had crafted musical instruments from ship materials. A guitar made from wooden panels and wire, drums from overturned containers, flutes from piping. A handwritten songbook contained lyrics about their extraordinary situation, with titles like Ocean in the Trees and The Village That Floats. They created art, Hero said, photographing everything. Even in survival mode, they made time for music. Each room added layers to their understanding. Some passengers had become gardeners, others engineers. A former accountant had established a trading system with local indigenous groups. A chef had cataloged edible jungle plants. Everyone had found purpose in their strange new world. By midday, they reached what had been the ship's daycare center. The walls were covered with handprints and faded paint, dozens of them in different sizes. These aren't just from the children who were passengers, Raj observed, measuring some of the smaller prints. Based on the dates written beside them, some of these children were born here on the ship. Maya felt a chill despite the heat. They weren't just surviving. They were building a future. After a quick lunch break, they ventured into the more dangerous lower decks. The tilt of the ship was more pronounced here, and they had to navigate carefully around buckled floors and collapsed sections. The ship's massive engines sat silent in their chamber, now a rusted monument to modern engineering. Nearby, they discovered a workshop where the survivors had repurposed parts to create tools and generate limited power. Ingenious, remarked Valeria, examining a water wheel system that had once harnessed a small stream that flowed under part of the ship during rainy seasons. They combined modern knowledge with primitive techniques. Beyond the engine room lay the cargo hold, their primary target for today's exploration. The massive doors were sealed shut with warning signs posted in multiple languages. Danger, do not enter without authorization from council, Maya read aloud. They had a governing council? It took nearly an hour for them to safely open the heavy doors. What they found inside left them speechless. The enormous space had been transformed into a combination warehouse, museum, and library. Along one wall stood carefully preserved artifacts from their former lives. Wedding albums, diplomas, favorite books, family heirlooms. Handwritten labels told the story of each item and its owner. They were preserving their history, Danielle whispered. The center of the hold contained long shelves of bound journals, hundreds of them. Each passenger and crew member had apparently been encouraged to document their experience. Some wrote daily accounts, others created artwork or technical manuals for the systems they helped develop. It's a complete record, Maya said in awe. They wanted their story to be found. But it was what they discovered at the far end of the cargo hold that finally revealed why the Aurora community had left their sanctuary. Massive detailed map covered the wall, showing the ship's location in relation to nearby geographical features. Pins and strings marked paths through the jungle, with notations about terrain and travel time. Next to it hung a timeline of expeditions, growing more frequent in the later years. They were scouting escape routes, Akiro said, tracing the marked paths with his finger. Nearby, a sealed glass case contained what appeared to be official documents, letters addressed to authorities, identifications for all residents, and legal paperwork establishing their status as survivors rather than deserters. They were planning their return to civilization, Maya realized. The final piece of the puzzle came in the form of a video recorder with dozens of memory cards carefully labeled and dated. The team huddled around Hero's laptop as he connected the most recent one. The screen flickered to life, showing Captain Reynolds, now with a gray beard and weathered face, standing in this very cargo hold. This is the final recording from the Aurora Star community, he began, his voice steady. After 7 years of survival against impossible odds, we face a challenge we cannot overcome. The foundation beneath our home is eroding. Engineers estimate complete. Structural failure within 8 months. He stepped aside to reveal detailed diagrams showing how the ship was slowly sinking into the soft ground beneath it. We have chosen to leave while we can still do so safely. And while our community remains strong, using materials from the ship, We have constructed transport vehicles to carry our essential supplies and our most vulnerable members. The rest will travel on foot, following the routes our scouts have established over the years. The camera panned to show dozens of people packing, working with purpose and organization. Should anyone find this vessel in the future, the captain continued, know that it served as more than just our shelter. It became our town, our home, our world. In leaving, we take with us not just the practical knowledge we've gained, but a profound understanding of what humans can accomplish when necessity strips away the artificial boundaries between us. His final words sent chills through the research team. We have left a complete record of our time here in the hope that our experience will not be forgotten. The Aurora Star didn't sink as the world believed. Instead, it rose to become something far greater, a testament to human resilience, ingenuity, and cooperation. We now return to the world we left behind, forever changed by our time in this impossible place. The video ended, leaving the team in stunned silence. They made it out. Danielle finally whispered. They actually survived and left together. Maya looked around at the perfectly preserved record of an extraordinary community. The question now is, where did they go? And did they make it safely? As if in answer, Raj called from across the room, where he'd been examining a stack of maps. I think I might know. Come look at this. He pointed to a route marked in red, leading through the jungle to a coastal settlement nearly 100 miles away. And look at the date this map was created, he added. Maya's eyes widened as she read it. 3 years ago. Which means, Akiro said slowly, they might still be out there. The discovery of the survivors' planned escape route changed everything. What had begun as an archaeological curiosity now felt like a rescue mission with an urgent human connection. Back at base camp, Maya spread the maps across the planning table as the team crowded around. If they followed this path, she said, tracing the red line with her finger, they would have reached this coastal town called Puerto Esperanza. The name seemed fitting. Port Hope. I've contacted colleagues at the University of Lima, Danielle said. Puerto Esperanza is real, a small fishing community that's grown substantially in the last few years. No one's made any connection to the Aurora Star survivors, though. Hiro scrolled through satellite images on his laptop. The settlement has nearly doubled in size since 2022. New construction, expanded infrastructure. We need to go there, Maya decided, looking up at her team. Their faces reflected her own mix of excitement and disbelief. Akiro raised a practical concern. What about our permit? We're authorized to study the ship, not track down missing passengers. I'll handle the bureaucracy, Maya assured him, but we can't ignore this. If these people survived for years in the jungle only to die trying to reach civilization. She left the sentence unfinished. That evening, Maya made calls to the university board and government officials, explaining their findings and requesting an expanded scope for their expedition. The story was too compelling to deny. We'll split into 2 teams, she announced at breakfast the following morning. Valeria will lead the continued documentation of the ship with half our researchers. I'll take a smaller team to Puerto Esperanza to follow the survivors' trail. By mid-morning, Maya's team was packed and ready. The 4-day journey would take them through dense jungle before reaching roads where vehicles could meet them. Guides from a nearby village had agreed to lead them, intrigued by the story of the floating village people who might have passed through their territory years earlier. The elders remember them, said Miguel, their lead guide. A large group, very organized, carrying strange equipment made from shiny parts. They traded medicines and knowledge of the ocean for food and guidance. As they set off, Maya felt a strange connection to Captain Reynolds and his community. Following in their footsteps made the Aurora Star survivors feel less like subjects of research and more like people she almost knew. The journey was grueling. Humid days gave way to rain-soaked nights. They crossed streams swollen by recent rainfall and navigated steep ravines, but along the way they found subtle signs confirming they were on the right path. An old campsite with the remnants of unique tools fashioned from ship materials, markers carved into trees with the Aurora Star's logo, even a child's doll made from cruise ship upholstery fabric. They really came this way, Raj marveled, examining the doll, and not that long ago, judging by how well preserved these items are. On the 3rd day, they encountered a small indigenous community, whose elder remembered the passing of the ship survivors. They stayed with us for many days, the old man told them through Miguel's translation. Their leader had hair the color of clouds and spoke with respect. They taught us about ocean fish and how to use the stars for direction. They carried their sick and elderly on rolling beds made from their great floating home. Did they all survive the journey? Maya asked anxiously. The elder nodded. They left with the same number they arrived with. Strong people. They knew how to live with the jungle, not fight against it. On the afternoon of the fourth day, the dense forest gave way to scattered farms, then finally to a dirt road where 2 university vehicles waited as arranged. The drive to Puerto Esperanza took another 3 hours, winding along coastal roads until they crested a hill and saw the town spread before them. Puerto Esperanza was larger than Maya had expected, a bustling fishing port with colorful buildings climbing up gentle slopes from the harbor. New construction was evident everywhere, with modern structures standing alongside traditional homes. They checked into a small hotel near the water, washing away days of jungle travel before beginning their investigation. The town felt both ordinary and mysterious, potentially hiding an extraordinary secret within its everyday life. The next morning, they split up to cover more ground. Maya and Danielle visited the town hall, while Raj and Hero explored the marketplace, showing photos of Captain Reynolds and asking subtle questions about newcomers who might have arrived in the last few years. At the municipal building, a clerk listened to their carefully worded inquiries about population growth. "Oh yes, we had many new families settle here about 3 years ago," she said casually. "They came together, almost 40 households. Very organized people. They bought land on the north side of town and built a whole new neighborhood." Maya tried to contain her excitement. "Did they say where they came from?" The clerk shrugged. "Some inland settlement that had problems. They keep to themselves mostly, but contribute to the community. Very skilled people. Engineers, teachers, doctors. Our town has benefited greatly." Following the clerk's directions, Maya and Danielle made their way to the northern section of town. The difference was subtle, but unmistakable. Homes built with efficient designs unlike the traditional architecture. Gardens utilizing advanced irrigation systems. Solar panels on most roofs. "Look familiar?" Danielle whispered, pointing to a rainwater collection system identical to ones they'd documented on the Aurora Star. They approached a small community center at the heart of the neighborhood. Outside, a group of children played while adults worked in a communal garden. Maya's heart raced as she noticed a familiar emblem painted above the doorway, a subtle outline of a cruise ship with a star above it. An older woman looked up from her gardening, studying the newcomers with curious eyes. Her weathered face suggested years of sun exposure, and her practical clothes had the look of someone accustomed to making do with limited resources. "Can I help you?" she asked, setting down her tools. Maya took a deep breath. "We're researchers from an international university expedition. We recently found something unusual in the jungle, a cruise ship called the Aurora Star." The woman's expression didn't change, but her posture stiffened slightly. After a moment's hesitation, she said, "You'd better come inside." The community center was simple but well organized, with walls covered in artwork depicting scenes from life aboard the ship. Children's drawings showed the Aurora Star surrounded by jungle trees. Photos documented celebrations and milestones of their unique journey. "I'll call the others," the woman said, picking up a phone. "They'll want to hear this." Within 30 minutes, the center had filled with people of various ages, all watching Maya with intense interest. Among them was an elderly man with a white beard whom she immediately recognized from the video recordings. Captain Reynolds, older but unmistakable. He stepped forward, extending his hand. "I'm Samuel Reynolds, former captain of the Aurora Star, current head of the new Aurora Community Council. We've been waiting a long time for someone to find our ship." The room filled with murmurs of excitement and apprehension. "How much of our story do you know?" he asked. "We found your records, the cargo hold museum, your final video message," Maya explained. "We know you survived for years after the tsunami carried the ship inland, built a community, and eventually made your way here. What we don't understand is why you never contacted authorities, never told the world you were alive." Captain Reynolds exchanged glances with the others before responding. "When we first realized our situation, we tried using the ship's emergency systems to signal for help. Nothing worked. We were too far inland, too isolated. As months passed, we faced a choice: spend our energy on futile rescue attempts or focus on survival." A middle-aged woman stepped forward. "I was the ship's communications officer. Once we established contact with local indigenous communities, we learned that the outside world believed the Aurora Star had sunk with all hands lost. Insurance had been paid to families. Memorial services held. Years had passed. Returning would have created legal and emotional chaos for the families who had moved on, continued Reynolds. And after what we'd built together, many of us didn't want to return to our former lives. We had become something new, not passengers and crew, but a community with our own values and systems. Maya struggled to process this revelation. So you chose to stay hidden? To start new lives here? Reynolds nodded. We decided to integrate quietly into this small town, to bring our skills and knowledge without bringing the media circus that would have followed our miraculous return. We keep our history alive among ourselves but live as ordinary citizens to the outside world. Until now, Danielle said quietly. The captain's eyes reflected a question Maya wasn't sure how to answer. These people had made an incredible journey and a profound choice. Did she have the right to expose their story to the world? What happens next? Reynolds said. Depends on what you choose to do with what you found. Maya stood on the beach near Puerto Esperanza, watching waves crash against the shore, while the weight of an impossible decision pressed down on her. Behind her, the town bustled with ordinary life, fishermen hauling in their daily catch, children playing in the streets, market vendors calling out to customers. Yet now she knew that woven into this community was an extraordinary group of people, with a story that would captivate the world. You've been quiet since yesterday, Danielle said, joining her on the beach. Still processing? Maya nodded, watching a fishing boat battle the waves. I keep thinking about what Captain Reynolds said, that they made a deliberate choice to disappear. Do we have the right to undo that? After their initial meeting, Reynolds had invited the research team to dinner at his modest home overlooking the bay. There, surrounded by artifacts salvaged from the Aurora Star, the ship's compass, maps, and photos, he had explained more fully. Our legal existence ended when the ship was declared lost, he had told them. The world mourned us, insurance paid out millions to families, and life went on. If we suddenly reappeared after all these years, he had shaken his head. The media frenzy would be just the beginning. There would be legal battles, psychological trauma for families who had found closure, questions about insurance fraud even though none of us saw those payments. Reynolds' wife, Lucia, the teacher whose diary they had found, had added her perspective. More importantly, we became something different during those years on the ship. The experience changed us. The social boundaries that once separated passengers from crew, wealthy from working class, all dissolved when we had to depend on each other to survive. Now back on the beach, Maya struggled with conflicting obligations. To historical truth, to academic integrity, and to the human subjects of her research.